Today's video is on Acerola, or Barbados cherry. I'm going to show you a few of my trees here growing. This shrub in particular was planted in 2016 in the ground. I don't prune it a whole lot. You can see I've left it more or less to a bush form, which is what it's naturally going to do. So you can see it's branching out low to the ground. And this is prime season for the fruit right now. May is typically when these start fruiting for you. And these actually have the ability to fruit well into the summer as long as our temperatures don't exceed that 105 range. Once we're above that temperature, then the pollen tends to dry out and you don't get fruit. When I first put this plant in the ground, it was only 3 gallon, and it did not fruit for the first year and a half. So that's the one thing, is you need to be a little patient with this plant. It's not going to fruit immediately for you. It does take about a year and a half to establish and start setting fruit. You'll get lots and lots of flowers, but those flowers won't set fruit until the plant is ready. So right now this is pushing about 10 feet tall, and right now this is about 8 feet wide. There's another angle to the side so you can get a sense for the trunk. You can see that I cut it back to these main scaffolds. If you want this in a tree form, just train the one trunk. Just continually cut off any kind of branching from the bottom to train that single trunk, and you can get this into a tree form if you want. Due to our heat and generally not too many chill hours in the winter, we can't grow the standard cherries like Bing. So this is our best alternative to that. Do they taste like a true cherry? No, not really, but they're delicious fruit. They have a sweet tart flavor. There is a bit of seed to it. There's 3 seeds on the inside. You can see those seeds there at the center. If you want the sweetest taste on these, you wait until they almost get to a purple shade. The taste of the flesh is like almost a fruit punch flavor. Not super sweet, definitely has that tart balance, but really delicious fruit. I planted this, in my typical half native, half cactus mixed soil. And the main thing with watering on this one is it has a shallow root system like most subtropicals. Light and frequent is the best approach for this plant. It does not need to be deep watered, especially when we hit those temperatures when we're approaching 100 and beyond. Good thing to water this daily. Just a light application. On fertilization, I did do organic fertilizer the first few years to establish the tree. Now I don't do anything for it. You can see a fair amount of mulch on the ground, and then the cherries also do fall inevitably on the ground with wind, and just because I can't harvest them all. And so those break down and go back to the tree, and that's all this tree gets. And despite that, you can see it's full of fruit set, full of a fairly mature plant, 7 years in the ground. Here we have a younger example. This one's under 3 years old. You can see that I prune it a whole lot more just because it's near my path. Try to clear the very bottom of the trunk there, but it is multi-trunked. This gets intense sun in the late afternoon. Barbados cherry has no issue dealing with full-on sun all day. In fact, they need to be in a good amount of sun to produce well. So this is one plant you never have to shade protect in our climate, which is a huge plus. Even a 3-gallon start, you do not need to, shade protect it its first year. It's perfectly fine in full sun. On winter, I have never frost protected my plants. They're said to only be tolerant of cold, to around 30. Under short periods, my yard has gone down to mid-20s. And while some of the tips may, die back a little bit, the plant really is not affected, other than losing some leaves in the winter time. So this is like a semi-evergreen. It will drop some of its foliage once we hit those freezing temperatures. So fuss-free both on the winter and summer protection. Here we have another example. This is more in a tree form again, very tall. This one I transplanted from another area in my yard, so it's been in this spot for about 5 years now. It too was full of cherries. As far as pests, this really is a pest-free plant. You're not going to have any issues with bugs really. Nothing goes after it. It's not prone to any kind of disease. You know, if you're living in more of a tropical climate, more humidity, you might have some issues. Like in Australia, I think they have issues with fruit fly. Fortunately, it's too dry here for that. So your fruit does not spoil. You may get some pressure from the birds, but if you have a tree that's mature like this, there's going to be plenty of fruit on this plant to feed both the birds and you. So it's really only when your tree is in its first year where you might lose your whole crop to birds, because I do find that birds will go after this fruit more than anything else in the yard, which could actually be advantageous. I think that's probably why they're not going after, you know, my apricot as much or my peach tree as much. They're also ripening at this time is because they have just a plethora of cherries to pick from. So I have 4 of these in my yard. I might even add more. They're a fantastic shrub layer, you know, to put in your garden, filler in between trees. That also is an edible. The cherries have very high vitamin C content, very nutritious, delicious, and chock full of fruit. There are other tropical cherries you can try in our climate, but you'll find that they are not going to be as productive. You know, your Pitanga tubas, your Suriname cherries. I'll just show you real quick as comparison value. Here's my 6-year-old Black Star Suriname cherry, and you can see it's really not all that large. It hasn't grown a whole lot. It stayed small. And I get about a dozen cherries off this tree. You know, a dozen cherries off this tree versus hundreds. And this is not the only time of the year the Barbados cherry fruits. It also fruits in fall time. Since we're on the topic of tropical cherries, I thought I'd just point out again for comparison value another one that can grow here, but you can see is very small and takes a very long time to put some size on, and that's the Pitanga tuba. This one here I got as a small start, you know, from Wellspring. So this is a very small plant to begin with, but after 2 years it's not put on a whole lot of growth. You know, this is only coming up about 6 inches from the ground. While they can fruit small, given that it's such a slow grower, it's not going to put much production on for you. Another tropical cherry that can grow very well here is the Jamaican cherry, or strawberry tree, also known as Malpighia glabra. This is the yellow form of it. I've got mine in a container for the one drawback for this tree, which is that it is very frost sensitive. Many people have put this into the ground in our area and lost the tree, where it froze back to the roots. So if you put this in the ground, you have to frost protect it. So unlike a Barbados cherry, this one does require protection, but will provide that cherry-like fruit for you. Different taste altogether. This one tastes more like cotton candy, I'm told. Very, very sweet. So if you live in a desert climate, zone 9B or higher, definitely look into Barbados cherry if you haven't already. It's one of the easiest and most rewarding tropical plants you can put in your yard. highly recommend it. A thumbs up if you like this video, and if you have questions, please post them below. Thanks for watching and happy gardening.